So welcome everyone. I'm Jay Lyman. I'm a librarian with the Seattle Public Library, and we're going to talk today about franchising. I'm super excited to have my friend and colleague Jeff Levy here, who's going to walk us through how franchising works in all of this. As I mentioned earlier, we are recording this so that those that couldn't be here today are able to watch this later. And if you are watching this later, also welcome, and we're glad that you're here. We will turn off the recording at the end so that we can have a conversation and answer questions then. And if you signed up today, I will also send you copies of the slides, and we'll have that recording in an interim location so you can review it that way too. And I think with that, Jeff, I'm going to turn time over to you.
Good. Thank you, Jay. Thank you for that introduction. And of course, thanks to the library for hosting this. This is the third in a series of seminars we've done together. It's always a pleasure. I appreciate the support. And just to add what Jay said, he will be sending you this actual slide pack after the talk. And there's a very current research paper that was done around small business with the franchise perspective. And so we'll be adding that. It's a link that you'll also get. So keep an eye out for it. It's really interesting reading, very current data. You can see on the first slide, my webpage. It's not necessarily promoting it today, but it's another way of learning more about franchising, my email. But I would encourage people to connect with me through LinkedIn. It's just a way of us sort of following each other's careers and seeing how things are going, and just another method of communication, of course. So please feel free to link in. And if any of you ever do want to reach me, just please remind me how we met, whether it's a library seminar or one of the other public forums where I talk. Okay? And again, we're after our talk, Jay is going to do a talk about what the library offers in terms of research, and I could tell you it's an invaluable asset in our community. I've been friends with Jay for years, and many of my clients use their research capabilities, and it is priceless because it's free, but it's also priceless because of the quality. Okay. And I will check I'll ask Jay to check the chat. So if a question comes up, we'll look at it in chat, but we won't leave today without time for a discussion. Okay. So I won't bore you with my background. I'll just give you some highlights. I'm 74 years old. I'm a franchisee myself. I'm in my third decade as a franchise owner. So I've renewed my franchise for the third time about a month or two ago. But my background is about 30 years in pure entrepreneurship, starting businesses, buying businesses, selling businesses. And then in the last 20 years, when I looked at my life as something that I wanted to have a little bit more stability and a little bit more predictability, I started looking at the franchise world. In addition to that, I recently was the chair of the Entrepreneurship Center of Seattle University's Entrepreneurship Center, and I taught college there for a couple of years, and I'm a co-author of a book on small businesses. So enough about me. I wanted to talk, before I get into the agenda, I wanted to talk about motivation. So whatever business you might start on your own, motivation is really important. And I found this picture in an old shoebox of family photos and found that my great-great-grandparents started a picture framing business back in the 1880s in Brooklyn, New York. And as I learned more about it, is they were motivated to create a life for themselves because they left some religious persecution in Russia. And it just reminded me that motivation is the most important thing. We'll talk about how you choose businesses, how people evaluate franchises, but fundamentally, you have to have the personal motivation to make a change in your life to make a difference and move forward. I'd love to tell you they became Nordstroms. They didn't, but they did start a nice family tradition. So the agenda today is we'll talk about there's some demographic and statistics I want to share with you about what's going on in franchising and small business. But I'll reasonably quickly get into franchising as a business model, how it compares to other kinds of businesses, and what are its unique qualities. I'll talk about the categories that franchises fall into. I'll talk a little bit about the age and education of people that become franchisees. I'll talk about the investment levels for different kinds of franchises. I'll talk a little bit about the clutter that you might find if you try to do some of your own research. And we'll end up with the legal side of it, and that is your franchise disclosure agreement and what are the elements in there. And I'm sure I will cover some of the things about how franchises get financed. So before I begin, I'll just check a chat quickly. Good. We have a good afternoon there. Okay, so first of all, let's start with the definition of franchise. It's a French word, and it means to free oneself from servitude. Now, I sort of may be a little bit over the top saying that working for someone else is servitude, but if you think about it, you're working for someone else's dream. They tell you when you start, when you end, when you take vacations, etc. So franchising is one way of freeing yourself from working for someone else. And one of the things that's happening in our society today is that, and I don't know the age of anybody on this call, but 50% of people that are 50 years or older typically will lose their job, no fault of their own. That's a recent ProPublica study. So we think today, what are the options that become available to people, and franchising becomes one, and we'll dig into that more deeply. In terms of when Jay and I were talking just before this, and sort of Jay's in a very unique position because the library does so much work with all the entrepreneurial and banking communities and small business administration. His sense is that small businesses are exploding today in a positive way, a lot of growth going on. And so just to support some of that, today, 1 in 6 workers in their 50s are self-employed. Jay, will you let that nice person in? So one in 6 in their 50s and 1 in 3 in their 60s. Really think about that. And oftentimes when there's a little bit of a tumult in our lives, we think about starting our own business, but if we don't have the right idea and we don't have the training, it's difficult and stressful. And I'll try to show you how franchising might fit that need. And just to remind everybody that this is not a woe is me economy. What is so exciting is that over the last 3 years, during this pandemic and I think economic challenges we've gone through, business licenses have continued to grow. And a little bit more data in what's happening in the franchise world. And this is 2023 forecasts, and these tend to be conservative. They're expecting almost 15,000 more franchise units to up to 805,000. And I think the reason this is important is that people who are considering a franchise have to understand, or should understand, they're entering a community of other people who have gone through a similar journey. So you won't be the first, and oftentimes you become part of this community that supports yourself. Revenues in franchise, employment in franchise, all predicted to be on the upswing this year. I've been doing coaching in this franchise world since 2002. I've done it through many recessions and blips in the economy. The franchise groups tend to do well. They're not hockey stick companies that all of a sudden make people, ridiculously rich, but they're more stable and predictable because of the best practices and the support. A couple of other just demographic I promise not to be political. Today, the group on this call likely fits into this 21st century life cycle, where we start our careers perhaps a little bit later. We have good careers in a particular siloed industry, and then all of a sudden in our late 50s, a career break happens. The career break happens because of our companies get bought, we get a boss we didn't like, we get subjected to age discrimination. And so what do we do? Because people are living longer. When I renewed my franchise agreement at 74 years old, I figured I had at least 10 or 15 more years of being productive and doing the things I enjoy. So anyway, a little background that might help you understand what's happening today and why franchises are growing at the rate that they are. I always get asked, what are the hot franchises? What are the categories? Or sometimes people will say, I don't want to be in the food business, so I'm not going to look at franchising. And I wanted to explain that even though food businesses are a part of franchising, they are not by any way the overall percentage. In the work I've been doing, where I've helped over 375 people start a franchise, I think 4 were in the food business. Nothing wrong with the food business, but there's a whole other world there. So this data actually is pre-COVID. However, now that the world has opened up, it's moving back in this direction. So health, beauty, and fitness, so hair salons, things like, 24-hour fitness, any of the gym categories, yoga categories, stretching categories, Pilates studios, very strong. And again, things relating to, hair salons, etc., strong category. Fast casual food restaurants have been a strong category in franchising. Most of the work that I've been doing tends to be in the business services. Those are franchise companies that support businesses, and they could be printing, they could be cleaning, they could be recruiting, they could be IT support. There's a whole raft of franchise businesses that are B2B. There's of course general retail, and another category that tends to always do well, even in the face of inflation and recessions, home services. And those are things like window cleaning, carpet cleaning, kitchen upgrades, small appliance repair. Again, probably 30, 40, 50 categories of franchising in that group. Now, what's the age and education of the typical franchisee today? So our franchisees are educated. Almost 50% of them have a bachelor's degree, and another 25% have master's degrees. You do not, it's one of the interesting things, if you were going on a job interview, they're going to want to know your resume and your curriculum vitae and where'd you go to school. Franchisors are really not interested in that. They're interested in your transferable skills, your motivation. But we do tend to get people that are educated and motivated. And if we look at the left of the screen, for most of my last 20 years, the majority of my clients have been the baby boomers. People born in the late 40s, probably get into their late 50s, early 60s, get laid off. But that number is changing, and there's some data that I'm currently looking at refreshing. And this Gen X number, the 40-year-olds, are an absolute growing demographic in franchising. And the reason they're a growing demographic is because they are not bonded to the belief that a job in corporate America will take them through to a pleasant retirement age. Just doesn't happen anymore. So I'm going to give you guys some ideas of what's going on in let's call it your cohort of other people. Thomas Friedman identified the fact that we live in a very flat world today, and we're responsible. I think people that I work with that end up moving forward in a franchise take responsibility for themselves and their own welfare. And so when we think about where each of you may be today and what each of your vision is for the next part of your life, how are you going to build this foundation of economic wealth and security, and I think, quality of life? So we could stay in the job market, but I think history proves that is more temporary than long-term. You can start an independent business, and I'm a big supporter of people who have the right idea, have the right skills to put together proper business planning, et cetera, doing all the research. So independent business is an option. But for those of you who do not have the idea, or maybe the structure around the idea to start, build, and grow a business, a franchise might be the right choice for you. I do want to put a couple of words of caution in this. Even though you sign a franchise agreement, it's a lot of hard work. You're building something, you're building up your business. This quote is something that I hold dear to my heart, and it's that if you start something new as an entrepreneurial venture, you're going to spend a few years of your life that might be uncomfortable, but you're doing it so you can spend the rest of your life in a way that most people can't. And our friend Warren Buffett identified something really important, and that is if the fear dragon is becoming too much of a factor in your decision about moving forward, put things in perspective and realize that it's less risky, I think, to start a franchise business. And I'll explain how you can evaluate the risk in that business than working for someone else and then perhaps losing your job when you're 60 and you're still vital. Okay, so this image speaks for itself. That's not franchising. That's what pops to my mind when I think of working for someone else. So if we look at today's worker who moves into a franchise, these are the main motivations. One, 30% of them are ready to be their own boss. They just have decided that now's the time for me to sign the front of the check versus the back of the check. Another 19% just have, I think, a realistic view of working in corporate America. And then as we go down the list, you can see passion becomes another very important factor. They get to a point where quality of life is something that they want to have more control over than, again, working for someone else. So now we're going to do a deeper dive into what the franchise model is all about. How do you evaluate it? What are the good things and bad things? I'm going to do a quick check on the chat. Someone said, surprised they're not seeing entertainment style businesses. It's interesting, James. In the franchise world, I've seen like event franchises, event management franchises, but I've not necessarily seen entertainment. But if you wouldn't mind, maybe in the chat, give me some ideas as to what kind of entertainment businesses you're thinking about, and that might be helpful to me. Okay. So let's talk about franchising from a pure business perspective. What is it? It's a distribution strategy. So if you go back in the history of any franchise, even McDonald's, they started as an independent company run by a family or run by an individual. And somebody believed that this method that they have for success could be repeated and it could grow nationally and potentially internationally. And when they sat down and looked at the resources necessary to grow it as a privately held company or a publicly held company, they realized that they would have to build infrastructure. They'd have to hire human resources people. They'd have to build support structures. So the concept of a franchise came up. The first franchise in America was actually the Singer sewing machine company. There's a little bit of history there. So in a franchise model, the franchisor has the responsibility for putting together the system that they know is reproducible, and then within certain laws, provide that as an investment to somebody. And so it's a choice they made to have the maximum distribution and visibility for their company. Franchises, you will find, are very systematic, very clear as to all the details that one needs to follow to get that reproducibility. They tend to have a much higher success rate than independent companies. And one of the things we teach people how to do is look at the history of a franchise, and you can tell, it's public information, how many franchises they had in 2010, 11, 12, and so on. Are they growing? Are they receding? If not, but they will tend to have a higher success rate staying in business than independent startups. Barriers to entry can be less. And one example is, if you're going to fund an independent idea, banks don't necessarily look at that with the most kindness. But if you go to them with a franchise model, there actually is a franchise registry for their franchise, so that they know that the franchise is a legitimate company and you're more likely to get the investment. The other thing that is interesting about franchising is it's not a job interview. What they're looking for are people with motivation, properly financed, and have skills that in their career could be transferable to the business. If you were in the particular industry of the franchise, they sometimes get concerned that you're going to bring those bad habits or those habits into their model, and they really want you to follow their system. And the other thing that I think makes a franchise unique is that you are working for yourself. And when I say that, you have a corporate entity that you own. So I'm JL Consulting Services, Inc., DBA, my franchise. And any of you who start a franchise will have the name you choose for your company with a DBA, the franchise, and you're doing your own books, you're doing your own P&L, you're writing off whatever you legally can do to your business. If you're fortunate enough to be making money, which you should be able to put money into retirement accounts, 401ks, etc. So you are working for yourself, but when it comes time for support, you're part of this community of other people doing the same work in perhaps the same franchise. Just check the chat. Okay. Oh, good. Yeah, well, that's a good point. James, thank you for that clarifying. Certainly we see things, and there are franchises in those categories of entertainment. So we see axe throwing. Now, that we may have a debate whether that's entertainment or not, but it's those kind of things. It's paintball. But they didn't make the top list of the higher. They tend to be in the very high investment range as well. Okay. So again, I'm always asked the question, what's hot in franchising? I tend to shy away from answering it because what might be hot may not be the right business for you and what you're trying to do. But if we look at demographic trends today, products and services for seniors, and that might include helping a senior get in-home care. It might help a senior get transitioned to a senior care facility. It may be an estate planning where they'll actually help a senior help sell their house, do estate sales. Things in the science, technology, engineering field. Jay, this is something you don't know. You do know this. My wife is a UW graduate math professor, and she's retired now. But because of my connections, she's actually writing curriculum for franchises, and that's sort of fun work for her to do because it's a very vibrant field today. Where schools may not have the budgets to support all the after-school programs, and franchises come in there. Green products and services. One franchise I'm working with now does window coverings that stop UV rays from coming in into homes. They also actually have bulletproof coverings, which I thought was fascinating as well. Very active also are all the services that people need in their home. So we just had new window coverings put on because we are selling our place in downtown. I called a franchisee that I put in business about 5 years ago, and she came right up and took care of it for us. Other growth areas, business services. As companies look to be more efficient, they go outside and give contract work in many cases to franchise companies. And then the health and beauty side, we continuously see, because everybody grows hair, everybody's concerned about their looks, a lot of new things happening in that category. I see chat, okay. Oh, good. So someone asked a question. Let me, if I can, I'm gonna hold that question till the end, and it's a very important one. What kind of franchises could be positioned if there's a downturn in the economy? I'm going to make a note of that, and we will come back to it for sure. Okay, thank you for that question, Jason. Okay, let me take a moment for a quick drink. So when we enter into a franchise agreement, there are two parties. There's the franchisor and there's ourselves, and we have an agreement, an operating agreement. So I want to give you the perspective from the franchisor's point of view as to what's important to them and what keeps them up at night. So franchisors like the fact that they can grow quickly because they don't have to go to the bank every week to raise money. The capital for the locations are coming from the franchisee. They know that if you get to a point of a franchise decision where you want to be in, and they like you, you're motivated. You're going to give this business your full attention and effort. The franchisors like the fact that you're implementing at the customer level the business, where they are working at the visionary level as to what goes next. How does the business become more efficient? What more services can go? How does it grow? Franchisors also like the fact that they have costs to provide their services, and many times those costs can be shared among the franchisees. And an example I use in my franchise, I paid $750 a month as a brand building fund. And if any of you know what the costs today are to do advertising, that's nothing. But when you spread it out over 150 people, it's some real dough, and you can buy TV ads and radio ads, etc. And so franchises like the fact that the groups can share some of these costs. And of course, today with reviews, all you have to do is open your computer and put in Yelp or Angie's List. There's a sharing of risk. Everybody is dependent between the franchisee and the franchisor to support each other to make sure those reviews are good. What keeps a franchisor up at night, things that are more difficult for them, is that you have an agreement, but you're not an employee. They don't control you. They can't fire you. If you're not compliant with the agreement, they have to work with you to improve and make changes. But it's more the carrot than the stick. Their growth is based on how well you do. If there's a unit that is not performing well, sometimes they have to put more resources in to help that turn around and get stabilized. A big problem for franchisors today is the finding quality candidates. And I'll use that comment to make an observation to you. If you're doing research online to identify franchises, there's two things that you're going to have to work through. One is the online marketing might be just candidly to capture your name and sell it to the broker network. So you may get somebody that's not necessarily aligned with that franchise. So if you do go online, make sure you ask the person who calls you, are you working for the franchise or are you an independent person? But you also might find that you're going to be pushed more aggressively than you may want to be, because so many people go online asking franchises for information. So having them, that's why the industry I'm in exists today, is we sort of help a person focus on the category of franchises they should be working with. And it ends up being a little bit more streamlined of an activity. And lastly, franchisors have to deal with regulations. It is a very regulated group of businesses. They are Federal Trade Commission laws that affect a franchise, and there are state laws, particularly in Washington, that affect a franchise. And again, if they end up with any arbitration or litigation, they are forced actually to disclose that. So it's something franchisors manage very, very well. They don't want to get into fights with their franchisees. You most likely would be a franchisee, someone, people who come to this call today. The benefits are, if you know how to evaluate a franchise, you should get significant information before you make a choice. Legally, you can sign a franchise agreement within 14 days of getting their offering circular. I typically will tell people 2 to 6 months is how long you should take to properly vet and maybe compare and contrast franchises. If it's a brand name, you get some goodwill. Of course, you get a formula for running the business. And the thing that I appreciate is that when we start a business, your time is the most valuable asset you have. And how quickly you can get to running the business is very important. So once you sign a franchise agreement, they have a formulaic approach to get you open as quickly as possible. And you don't have to spend time, doing market research on who your customers are or what they pay for certain things or what appropriate rental should be for property. They provide that to you. Now, you always want to validate, but you're implementing, not creating. And as I mentioned before, this cohort, I'm on a call every Tuesday with my peers in my franchise, and it's the most valuable time I could spend because we're really helping each other be successful. But the negatives, and a franchise is not for everyone. And I really want to stress that. So it's not an equal partnership. You don't have a vote on the board. You know going into it what your responsibilities are and their responsibilities are. I'll go over some of the attributes of a healthy relationship, but you're not an equal partner in it. Royalties are based on sales. They're not based on profits. The argument for that is you don't want the franchise involved in your profits. Anybody who's run a small business knows at the end of the year, you don't want to show a lot of profits because they're all taxable. So you put money into retirement funds, or you give yourself you buy some capital equipment, or you give yourself a bigger paycheck or a bonus. So they only focus on the royalties, which means if you're losing money, you still are paying the royalty. If the franchise is not on their game, if they're not looking at market trends and changes, that could affect your business. A unit that maybe is doing something, particularly in the food business, if somebody gives someone E. coli, that makes the national news. So one unit can impact the overall reputation in certain industries. And lastly, you have less control. You're working within guardrails. There's still a lot of room for creativity, but in me as a franchisee, I know that I don't have the complete control as I would when I was an independent business owner. So that's just some of the negatives. I will tell you, when I was in my 50s, I had a real problem with not being able to do what I wanted. No, that's not true. In my 30s, when I got into my 50s, I was okay with following a more formulaic approach. And that's why I got into franchising. as I got into my 50s. I see a quick chat. Let's just do a drop down. Why do companies franchise versus brick and mortar? Let me come back to that again. I'm going to need to clarify that question, but we'll save it. Okay, so I'll come back to that. So how do you sort through the clutter? And there are, that's my definition of clutter. There are franchises in 80 different industries and over 4,500 franchises in the US. There are less in Washington State because we, unless they are willing to go through the rigor of registering here, they may not market in the state of Washington, but we still have 2,000 roughly franchises marketing here. So let's talk a little bit from a business perspective, investment levels, and different kinds of franchises. The franchises will use the term total investment. They'll all use that term. And the total investment means how much capital you need to put in a business to get it to the point where it's self-sustaining. It's not the point where you're taking money out of it, because they don't, a franchisor isn't going to tell you how much you can take out of the business. It depends on how you perform, but they'll tell you at what point the business should start to be cash flow break even. So you pay a one-time franchise fee that usually gives you the rights for 10 years to use that system. You have to invest in many businesses in terms of physical assets. So a truck is a physical asset, a computer is a physical asset, a lawnmower is a physical asset, paintbrushes, they're the physical assets you need to run the business. And then once it's dressed up and ready to go, there's a certain dollar amount to keep the doors open every month. Gas, heat, electricity, insurance, that's considered operating capital, overhead for employees, et cetera. So anytime we talk to a franchise, they will tell us what our total investment is, and that's what you should expect. You would be looking at probably financing to get the business started. So as I've been in this world, I feel franchises fall into 6 different categories. And again, before I get to this discussion, I'm normally talking to someone about, how do they envision their life going forward? Do they want to be a sole contributor working on their own like a consultant? Do they want to build a business of employees? Do they want something that's more of a cash flow type of business where they don't have to be directly involved? And then we talk about this. So there are sole contributor franchises that are typically consulting businesses. So coaching, sales training, recruiting is big in this category. There are things you can do on your own. And they tend to be in a total investment range of $100,000 or less. And a big part of that is the franchise fee, but it's a non-recurring expense. So the cost of operating those businesses are very low. Service businesses are like your Molly maids, like your Roto-Rooters, like your Mr. Electric, your Mr. Handyman, and I could go on and on. They're sending someone to a senior's house to give them companionship care or light non-medical care. Those tend to be in the $150,000 to $250,000, depending on how big of a territory you might acquire. Small boxes are things like automotive shop, one-off restaurants, print shops, sign stores, computer repair businesses. They tend to be in the 150 to 350,000 range. And I'll get into how people pay for these things, but normally when you start getting into some of these bigger ranges, people have a lot of financing options. And that's an important part of the discussion that one needs to have with a person considering franchises. The category on the bottom left is this investor manager. And that's for people who maybe aren't necessarily looking to replace income right in the beginning, they're looking for diversification, and they will look at a hair salon, they'll look at a gym, and there's many variations in those categories. Soul Cycle, we've seen those jump off the chart here. Orange Theory, we've seen a lot of those franchises grow. Those are businesses where you really work on it, not in it. You hire a manager. The manager typically oversees the employees and maybe more than one location. These tend to be about $200,000 to $250,000 per location. And it's sort of a unique niche in franchising, but it's for people that want to build several locations, but not necessarily work in the business. Specialty franchises, that's a very small part of this grouping. If you think of like the popcorn groups that you see at a seafair, or if you look at the pop-ups that we see during the holiday season in a mall, those are the specialty franchises. They're more part-time type of work, and they're more for retirees, et cetera. Total investment there, $65,000 to $70,000. And the last category that I've identified as a vertical niche in franchising is the idea of resales. I'm not going to cover conversions today, but resales are when someone has already built a business and they're ready to retire, or there's illness or divorce, and you're buying a business based on a multiple of the earnings of that business. Today, I'm working with a furniture repair franchise down in Oregon that's been there for 29 years, and the owner is retiring. And then I'm working on a franchise that basically cleans fryers at restaurants or any food services and then recycles it. That's a resale in the Philadelphia area. So resales are something that, if you're working with a franchise coach, for example, is a topic to cover, because it does, you are paying for multiple of earnings, but you're also eliminating the startup phase. So how do we pay for these things? How do we pay for a franchise? Let me take a drink of water. So the things you have to be thoughtful of is, one, do you have liquidity? And liquidity, by definition, is the ability to generate cash. Write a check out, if anybody writes checks these days, but write a check out for a certain amount of money to pay the franchise fee, for your training schedule, to put a deposit or a down payment down on a loan that you might take, and be able to cover your monthly requirements. So we do a lot of modeling in the beginning. We look at a franchise in terms of what is the capital you need to run the business, and making sure you have adequate capital to pay yourself or support yourself while you're doing that. We want to learn about borrowing capacity. This is a discussion we tend to have earlier than later to educate people about what is the range that their resources will allow them to borrow against. Franchises will do a credit check on you later on. They don't do this immediately, but let there be no surprises. A 680 or above a credit score, or a 720 or 750, which is more ideal, will actually make you more attractive and also make it easier to borrow. And then the last financial consideration is the idea of understanding your net worth. And if you're not familiar with the term, fundamentally, if you take everything you own, so your house, your car, if you have a life insurance policy with some cash value, if you have money in the bank, if you have a 401k, all those things that are assets, and then you take all the things that you owe money on, your liabilities, and you deduct one from the other. So franchisors will want to know, to qualify for their business, is your net worth in the appropriate minimum range? So be prepared. I did put in here this is something we actually, Jay and I did 10 years ago, and it ended up being the King County library system, but that's just a link. It was able to identify where the people came from. If you want to do a pre-qualification to get an idea of what your borrowing capacity is, there's a company in, it's now based in Boise, but it will do these pre-qualifications for you with just some basic information. And so feel free to use that. The information will just go between you and them, and they'll send me a note that somebody inquired. Okay, so the legal side, and this can be very boring, but I'm going to try to make it a little bit more exciting. There's really two things to focus on with a franchise on the legal side. They are required to give you a franchise disclosure document by law. You have to have it. You can't be pressured into signing it immediately. There's a 14-day waiting period, and then after you sign it, there's a 3-day rescission period. So people want you to take this thing seriously. And then there's a franchise agreement that you actually sign. And the franchise agreement does say that you've read the FDD and you agree and accept its terms. There are other situations where you will need an attorney. I'm running a little over my time, so I'm not going to spend a lot on that. But you do want an attorney on your team. You want an accountant on your team, to help you in your evaluation. The things that are in the franchise disclosure document are very important. This is not a sales document. This is designed to protect an investor. If any of you have ever seen an initial public offering, it's a very similar document with similar gravitas. It tells you who owns the business, what is there, were there any predeceasing companies, what is their experience, have they ever been subject to litigation, has there been any kind of background of bankruptcy in the history. Again, this is designed so that you don't get surprised later on. You know what the group is that you're getting involved in. They're very clear on what the fees are. Item 7 is very important because it covers in detail, low, medium, high, what is the appropriate investment for that business. And the reason that's helpful is that you can start looking at your market and saying, in my market, can I hire people at that level? Can I rent a space at what they're projecting? Because you want to be within the norms of what they think are appropriate expenses to start the business. Your financial obligations are very clear. If you have to pay any marketing fees or technology fees, etc. If the franchisor provides financing, which very few actually do, but some might, it's in there. What they're committing to you to provide as an ongoing relationship, a discussion around the territory, and that's where we bring Jay in as well, because we're looking to really understand what the demographics are, what competition is in a particular market. But the franchise will do a lot of that work for you as well. We do trust but verify. Things like trademarks, patents, what your obligations are to work with them, what you can and cannot sell out of, using their brand. Item 17 is important, and I like being able to know this up front. If I'm going to renew my franchise, so when I signed my first agreement in 2002, they told me, if you are here 10 years from now and you want to renew, you'll pay 10% of today's franchise fee to renew for 10 years. So I knew that. It wasn't something that was going to change. If I wanted to leave the franchise, or if I wanted to sell my franchise, those things are discussed up front. And if there's disputes, how are they resolved? In this document, they'll also let you know if there are any public figures that are associated with the franchise. And again, sometimes public figure could be good. Sometimes it may not be somebody you want to be associated with. Item 19, another one of these focus areas. Here's where they give you financial performance at the franchisee level. Franchisors are not obligated to provide that, but more and more are giving you detailed information about revenue, margins, et cetera, at the franchisee level. Item 20 is the list of all their current franchisees and anybody that's left in the last year. Again, think about that. When we go into a business, we want to hedge our bets with the best chance of being successful. And so here they give you the information. You can actually go out, visit, sometimes ride with people that are already in that business. Their financial statements, franchisors, are provided, and any contracts that you might need to enter into are provided, and the all-important receipt. If you get to the point of getting an FDD, please acknowledge that you received it. The franchisors are required by law to have that in a file. It doesn't obligate you to anything. It just says that you got their document. So Chris had a question about our franchise fees paid on gross sales. I'll make a note of that, Chris, and we'll come back to it. That's a good question. It's not a black and white answer. Okay. So the franchise agreement, when you sign, I've covered some of these as we talked in the FDD. They're basically things that are pulled out of the FDD that are considered to be the most important. So where's your business going to be? What is your territory? How long you're going to have it? What are the financial obligations in both directions? Are there any restrictions that they put on you? And this very important renewal, termination, and transfer documentation. I think I know one or two of you on the call. I've been doing this work for over 20 years. Most of the people that I talk with have some ability to do a franchise at some level. What really holds them back is fear. And I just put a little graphic together that fear can percolate up as a dragon in any number of ways. Sometimes it's lack of family support, lack of ability to make clear decisions. My best advice to people is that there's no reward without the risk. And the more information you can gain, the lower the intensity of the fear dragon. So what do we do next? Where do you guys go from here? So first of all, you want to start with the basis of put the business aside for a bit. What are your personal goals, needs, objectives, financially, lifestyle point of view, getting your family involved in the discussion about what do we want the results of being in this business to look like a few years from now. Make sure the franchise is registered in the state of Washington, if that's where you're going to do business. Don't ever allow somebody to push or try to sell you a business. You will find that out there, particularly if you're doing the sort of internet search. You want someone who's going to truly, in good faith, help you understand the nature of their business and see if it's a fit with what you're trying to do. And then you might consider working with a coach. So that's the community I'm in. We help people with some of this foundational work to choose franchises and understand them. This isn't a sales pitch for me. There are other people in the community that do this kind of work, but that's sort of where I focus in. And we typically, some might have a very minor fee, but typically we get paid by the franchisor, just like a real estate transaction where, if you buy a house, the person selling the house, well, the franchisor is responsible for paying the sales costs. And this part is very special because we were hosted by the library today. So I'm going to talk about one or two books, but they are available in the library. And so the E-Myth is something highly recommended for someone starting a business. It really has two themes. One theme is systematizing your business is fundamentally a path to success. And secondly, determining what your relationship is going to be to the business. Are you going to be a technician, basically in the franchise world, maybe buying a job, which again isn't bad, but is that your role? Are you looking to have a business because you like managing and working with people? That's another level. But is there a vision that you have for your life where the franchise is going to be a lever or a leverage point to help you achieve those things in your life? See a quick chat coming out. There you go. Thank you, Jay. Jay's good. And then, of course, I can't get a group together without a brief mention of my book. I can't help myself. It is in the library. You can get it with a library card. You can also download the Audible version, I believe, in the library, or no, you cannot, but you can get the CD version from the library, I think. Okay. The book that I co-authored really talks about the fundamentals of starting a business, not necessarily running a business. We really try to make it available as inexpensively or free as possible. It was, when it first came out, it was one of the top 6 business books by one reviewer, that group, a group called Mosaic Hub up in Boston. So how do you get help? And again, I don't expect from this talk that you now are an expert and can go from A to Z and end up in a franchise. You are likely going to need some help. That's my webpage. There's some good research stuff on there. Franchise.org is the International Franchise Association webpage. That is a bit of it's a trade association, so it's a bit of a marketing organization for franchisors. So be aware of that. If you're a veteran, there's some wonderful programs that you can find through the VetFran group. SCORE is a local group of volunteers that help people on some of the business skill planning activities. Business Impact Northwest has a community bank. And if you're particularly a woman or minority, they really specialize and focus in that category. Entrepreneur.com is an online magazine. You can put in top 500 franchises and just get a sense of what's out there. Again, if you think working with a coach is going to be something you might want to do, try to talk with them before you start throwing your email out, or at least use an email that you can track where you put it and who called you. The SBA has a couple of great sites for research on franchising. And again, I would always welcome, with no cost, no obligation, to spend an hour with someone to just try to understand and maybe help move them in a right direction. And lastly, all of you bring to the table some great life experience. Consider them lessons. The question is, where are you going to apply them going forward? And if you want to be in your own business, realize you can control your destiny, and a franchise is a great vehicle to do that. And again, you'll have my contact information and some more data that Jay will send to you when we're done. So I said I'm going to do this within an hour, 59 minutes and 18 seconds. I did write down questions, but Jay, you're going to do your library piece, and then we'll circle back to the questions. I'm going to stop my share. Okay. And Mr. Lyman, you are on.
Thank you, Jeff. Yeah, I'm going to start my share, and we'll walk through a couple of tools that I think could be valuable based on kind of what Jeff was talking about. I'm not going to do it from slides. I'm actually going to go to the library's website and talk about how to get into some of these tools directly. So here's the library's webpage. You should be seeing our current website here, the uncensored program that we have there. So if you're on the library's website, spl.org, go to our programs and services, and then business and nonprofit, and then business research tools. Now, I should have prefaced this by saying that all of the stuff that the library does with our business appointments, our workshops, all those kind of things, all those kind of event type things, you don't need to have a library card to subscribe or get into those kinds of things. But to use the tools, we're actually buying these tools from third-party vendors And so we are given a license to use them, or giving you a license to use them if you have a library card. So just like that book on the shelf that Jeff's talking about, we're going to pull that Making the Jump to Small Business Ownership book off the shelf. What I'm actually borrowing with my library card is a license to borrow that material for a period of time. And just like that, we also have electronic tools that you also can get a license to use, but you have to get the library card. Now, the good news is getting library cards are free, and you can start the process online and fill out this application. Eventually, you'll come in and show us your ID so we know who you are. You are who you say you are, and you live where you say you do. For Seattle Public Library, you can get a card if you live in King County or have a card from one of our reciprocal agreement areas. And so what's really cool about that, one of the things I really like about that is that those reciprocal areas include Pierce County, include the Snow Isle system, Kitsap County, even as far as Olympia and things like that. So if you have questions about getting a library card or how to do it for free, we'll cover some of those. We can even like look together at your situation and where you can get a card. But wanted to mention that because once you get to this part of the page where we see business and nonprofit, business research tools, from there, it's going to ask you for a library card to get into some of these tools that we buy for you to use. And let's say you already have like a Pierce County card or a Snow Isle card or something like that. They have amazing tools also. So you might even just start right there on their website, go to their business, their similar page like this, their business research tools page, and you might actually find the same tools or something very similar. And I can share about some of that stuff too after we turn off the recording as well, so that answer some specific questions there. Some of the ones I wanted to share with you based on what Jeff was talking about, if you're trying to research that industry or market, so like let's say you're interested in that franchise, starting down the path of talking to the franchisor about this, you might want to like do some more background research about the industry, what's currently going on. And this tool here, ABI Inform, see, it's asking me for my library card right there. So I'm putting that in there. This tool has some wonderful things in it, but there's so much that it kind of hides. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to actually show you an advanced search. I go to advanced. I can say, I'd like to see this first research report. So I want that to be my publication title, and we'll help you with this too. So I'm kind of going through it fast, but we have librarians that'll help you through that part of the research process. And let's say we were looking for a gym, the gym industry, fitness centers. That's what it's calling it. So you can see I keyword searched for this, and I only wanted to see these first research reports because I know these things are in here and they're updated quarterly for a wide range of industries. So here's our fitness centers from April 10th. And we can immediately see, this is from Dun & Bradstreet, and I can immediately see all kinds of stuff about this industry. Worldwide, fitness centers are valued at $90 billion. And there's more than 200,000 health and fitness clubs worldwide. If I scroll down, I can see some, usually there's like regional highlights. Yeah, some stuff about like employment. I'm scrolling fast because I want to get to some of this good stuff. Here's the forecast. So over the next 5 years, it's growing at 6.7%, 6.1. So it's tapering, but not as much as some. Some industries, this 2023 is a big spike, and then it goes flat from there. So this one's not too bad. It's kind of tapering off, but it's not growing at the same rate. If we check back in here next year, just like the forecast for the weather, forecast might change because this is based on like what's going on with the economy, what's going on with fitness centers, all those kind of things. And then it gives us a little bit of a sense of why. Issues, high member attrition rate, challenges, seasonal cash flow, defibrillators are listed here. Doctors recommend that health clubs buy portable heart defibrillators due to the increased rate of cardiac arrest during exercise. Interesting. I didn't know that. Trends, so changing demographics, all kinds of. We have a different one for demographics as well too. Anyway, this can give you a really good sense of what's currently going on in an industry. This report, would cost you a few $100s if you went out and just bought it off the shelf, so to speak. So don't do that. Get a library card for free. I'll show you the little trick on how I did this little anywhere in publication title, and you can download it as a PDF and walk away with it for nothing. So that's part of the value of what the library is doing on your behalf. That's one of them. I was also thinking about this one here, Data Axle. So let's say you do want to move forward and you're like really interested in that gym industry. Click on Data Axle. What this one can do is it can create a list of companies in a particular area. So we can find out, like, well, how many other gyms are in the downtown Seattle area, and so that's what this can do for us. So we can search this list of 81 million businesses in a really specific way. So what I do is go into my advanced search and tell it what I want to look for. So business types, I'm going to say gyms, gymnasiums, okay. So I click on it, drops down here. Then I'm going to say zip code 98104. I think that's downtown. Maybe it's 98101. And I might have the wrong code here because it's only showing me one, and I know there's more than one. Oh, here, I think it's this Health Club Studios. So I had this code, but I think it's actually this code. Yeah, that's starting to make more sense. So I might need to select a couple here. And here they are. Washington Athletic Club, Planet Fitness. There might be more there that if I did a little bit more digging, I won't take the time to do it here, but I might do a little bit more of an analysis to see if I've got the right NAICS code there that gives me the heading. But then I'd get a list like this. I have a feeling there's another heading that I should be clicking on there. And what this can tell me here is that this one is part of a corporate tree. This one, at least Data Axle doesn't know that it is. And so if I wanted to start to understand what that corporate tree looks like, well, I can click on this one for the Riot Athletics CrossFit. And I can see that that's, if I go up the chain, that's, the company ownership goes up to this CrossFit Incorporated in Boulder, Colorado. So I can start to understand more about like how this is organized and all of those kind of things. So lots of ways to search this. I think there's even a franchise way to search this as well too, if I'm remembering right. So have to look for that one again, but I know that it does tell us whether or not it is a franchise or it's those kind of things. So yeah, so I think those were the two biggest ones I wanted to share. I won't do a demo like I just did for those two, but if you're interested in demographics of who lives in an area, so sort of take that next step of the researching the gym and say like, well, who lives within a 5-block radius that might come to this gym. Them demographics now can share more about that. It might give us consumer expenditures on that category. It gives us lifestyle research and things. So lots and lots of stuff that you can get through that. And there you can see that's just the tip of the iceberg for business information at the library too. We have lots and lots of others. I think with that, I'm gonna stop there, but I'm going to end with this part, which is that you can also make an appointment with me or my colleagues, and we'll do a custom dive into these tools with you. So based on your situation, you share what you're working on, and we'll help you work through, here's the tools that'll be most helpful. That's a pretty popular service. So you can just click on the business information appointments. You can look for the next available. Looks like we're pretty full up, but we're always adding to this list. And so you can book, one of those that says available there. In that same sense, if I go back here to that main page, we started with business information appointments. We also have these legal appointments, legal consults. So with those, you can book the time of an intellectual property attorney tomorrow, if you want. At noon, we have 2 available that are there. These are attorneys that in their day jobs work at large tech companies. So they're very, very knowledgeable in these areas. They're specialists in intellectual property law or corporate law on May 16th. Looks like there's 2 available there too. So book those, they're free, they're 30-minute appointments. You can get questions answered about incorporation or about trademark, copyright, patent, all those kind of things too.
Okay. Jay, should I go through? I opened up the chat, and I can maybe address those questions on the chat first and then open it up for other discussion. Is that okay?
Let's close out the recording first, and then let's go to questions and conversation. So I want to just thank everyone from our audience that's watching this after the fact. Thank you for being here, and we hope you'll reach out to us if you have questions, and you know where to find us. So thanks for being here.